Hello, Jordan.
Hiya.
Hi. All right, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, and good morning to everyone who's joined in. Welcome to We For You's event on late diagnosed ADHD in women. Um, okay, am I able to? Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay. Hope everyone's been doing well. We're going to be starting the event now. Late diagnosed ADHD in women. Um, we are joined with our speaker, Jordan Campbell, who I'll be introducing in a bit now. Um, if you could please, yeah, yes, okay. All right. Introducing We For You. We are a safe space for hope and healing and concerned with the mental health and well-being of the society. We're here to bridge the gap between the clinical professional help and the community, as we found a great need in society for um, help with relevance to the mental health of the community, that is. I'm your host, Hannah, and I'm here to introduce our speaker and our organization, We For You. So together we can break the stigma and hopefully build a supportive community and ensure that no one suffers in silence. Thank you for being part of this journey, and let's make a difference one life at a time. Introducing our speaker, Jordan Campbell. Jordan Campbell is a speaker, writer, and author based in Northern Ireland. She's the creator of My Mum Has ADHD, a children's book that helps families understand ADHD in motherhood in a way that feels honest, accessible, and supportive. After receiving a late diagnosis of ADHD and autism, Jordan became passionate about reducing stigma and creating tools that support both parents and children. Her work blends lived experience and practical insight, helping women feel seen, understood, and less alone. Oops, my apologies. And without further ado, we will be starting our talk. I'm going to hand over the mic to Jordan. You can take on from here. Thank you,
Hello,
Jordan.
everyone.
My name is Jordan.
I'm Jordan, and thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited to have this conversation. I'm not used to this type of interaction, so please bear with me. Please ask any questions that you want to know. If there's anything that I don't cover, please ask. I'm happy to discuss anything on this topic. I've just prepared some things that I think that you might find useful. So I was late diagnosed. I didn't get a diagnosis until I was 28. It was first mentioned to me at 22. Women are 5 years more, 5 times more likely to be diagnosed later than boys. I think it's because when they're younger, we present differently. So a lot of you might be having sort of the same sort of issues, and you can let me know about that. I didn't understand why I found things so hard and things so difficult, and other people seem to just manage. Everything was always a bit chaotic in my life, and I bounced about from different mental health teams and had wrong diagnosis of depression and usual things that they give to teenage girls and write it off to hormones. And it wasn't until motherhood then that it became nothing else. There was no possibility it was something else. Motherhood really amplified it for me. I didn't understand why I found things harder. Simple things like leaving the house felt overwhelming. Remember everything, managing routines, planning around naps. I carried a lot of guilt and I thought I was just being dramatic and I wasn't able to manage like other people were. By the time I reached motherhood, I was dealing with sleep deprivation, hormonal changes, and constant overstimulation. If you're a mum, you will know what I mean. But it wasn't until diagnosis I was able to learn how my brain works and make things make sense. Not perfect, but finally understood. And so I want to talk to you about why women are diagnosed late, what undiagnosed ADHD can feel like, especially in motherhood, and then the identity shift that comes from not being diagnosed to diagnosed and how to deal with that after. So a lot of women aren't diagnosed until much later in life. And it's not because the symptoms weren't there, it's because they weren't looking properly. They used to look for hyperactivity more often in boys. Girls often present more inattentive. which means quieter, take things more internal. You can learn to mask and to cope and to push through. It always reminds me of that little duck that looks calm, but the feet are kicking away underneath. And from the outside, it can look like we're managing, but internally, everything feels harder than it should. Or if it's not inattentive and you're more like me and it was hyperactive, you can be written off as easily distracted, chatty, can't focus, and told constantly, if you could just focus, you'd be fine. If you could just sit still, if you could just take a breath or listen differently, you would be okay. But what people don't see from that is the internal guilt and the shame and the frustration of not being able to do those things, no matter how hard you try, you just can't do it. And if you know what I'm talking about, please leave a comment or react and ask if you want me to expand on anything else. Instead of being understood, then I find many women are labeled as anxious, emotionally unstable, overwhelmed, and then they try to spend years fixing the wrong thing, or even worse, how I was. They believe they're just broken. You end up then with a lot of high functioning women who just look like they're coping. Do you know what I mean? Like, are you in that position? Yes. It can look like you're coping. I completely understand. I'm not coping. Well, I understand that. As someone that's sitting in front of you right now, I am high functioning and entirely anxious about this conversation because it's formatted in this way. So I am just like you. I've just managed talking to you about it. Hopefully that I can provide some information then to help. I'm really glad that you're relating to it. I think then when motherhood comes along, the coping strategies that you have had in place, they don't work anymore. The structure goes, the routine goes, recovery time goes, and you're left then with constant demands, constant noise, no real pause, and everything that was just about manageable before just feels like too much. And then hormones play a huge role in that as well. After pregnancy, everything shifts. That drop makes ADHD women far more likely to suffer from postpartum depression. And for ADHD brains, it can mean a spike in overwhelm, brain fog, emotional intensity. So it's not that motherhood creates ADHD, it's just that it becomes impossible to ignore then. And I think undiagnosed motherhood can feel like constant overstimulation. The baby's crying, washing machine, the dog's barking, someone talks to you, and it's just snap. Your nervous system just fills up, and then something small happens, and the emotion feels so big it can be overwhelming. And that's where like rage and guilt cycle can come in, because you can beat yourself up for thinking, why am I getting angry? Why am I getting upset? I should be grateful. Other mums aren't struggling like this. How are the symptoms different in boys? So I can only speak as someone with experience as a female, saying that on typical they present more hyperactive, so more fidgeting, louder, more easily distracted. It would go a lot with the phrase "boys will be boys." So then in that type of way, I can't. I would have been told as a young girl that I behaved like a boy, and what they meant then was being too rough, too loud, too talkative, too everything. I find that word too has added a lot to people with ADHD. Okay, so where am I now? Overstimulation. The sensory cup fills up rapidly with noise, touch, and demands. Okay, so I find that that can be so difficult when you're undiagnosed because you don't have coping strategies and you don't understand why that all of a sudden the noises are too much, and simple things can lead to anger and frustration and tears all at once, and it can feel so intense that it scares you. It's remembering everything, thinking through what ifs, and that's then also when executive dysfunction shows up in real life. And sometimes you sit there stuck. I call it buffering. You know what needs to be done, but you can't move. That paralysis feeling. So you'll end up in this cycle of being overwhelmed and then reacting to the overwhelm, feeling guilty about your reaction to it, and then you can try harder, and then it can lead to burnout. Let me see. Getting a diagnosis didn't fix me. I wanted to do something, but just sitting there unable to. Yes, as I'm sure you can see, I can't stop fidgeting. So I usually have a ring, or I'll have something in my hand that I can fidget with to keep me calm, to try and keep me focused on the task at hand, which can be really, really difficult in school and difficult in work as well. So getting a diagnosis didn't fix me, but it explained me. And that's why I think diagnosis is important for everyone, especially for mothers, because it can be where things begin to change. The first time you're not looking at yourself through shame and asking yourself, why can't I do this? Or why do I do this? Are adults with ADHD hypersensitive? Yes, so there's a thing called rejection sensitive disorder or dysphoria. I'm not quite sure on the last bit. So you can take it and internalize it a lot more. I'm hypersensitive to criticism. So that comes unfortunately in hand with the fact that ADHD children and adults are more likely to be criticized for their behavior and their actions, which can sort of lead to a sort of guilt spiral because their behavior leads to being criticized. And then they take that criticism so much more on. It's so much more deep because of the rejection sensitivity. I think that's why diagnosis can be important, because having a diagnosis then can alleviate some of that pressure to think, okay, those criticisms weren't really true, because when they were criticizing someone, they're criticizing someone that they're prejudging to have a neurotypical brain. And if someone knew that you had ADHD, they probably wouldn't criticize you the same way if they were understanding. So then you wouldn't get the same amount of criticism, and you can wash some of that criticism that you have received away. Like, I had to talk too much, or you're too forward, or too honest, or overshare, that type of thing. I can realize now that I can't help it. That's part of the ADHD. So it lets you wash away some of the criticism, which can help with being hypersensitive to it. I laughed there because absolutely, ADHD can cause someone to become aggressive or easily irritated, and small things can get breakdowns, because this happens to me. Absolutely. So that's what I meant when I say that something small can make you snap. So in my motherhood experience, like I adore my dog, but there's a point to this. And if the baby was crying and the TV was on and the kettle was going, the dog could just jump up, who I adore, and I could just snap. And then I would feel so guilty because I had just cried and snapped over the dog touching me. But it's not the dog touching you. It is usually a buildup of lack of sleep, noise, stress, and a combination of things. And then you just have a breaking point. So let me see, where was I? Diagnosis didn't fix me. So diagnosis does not fix, but it adds into this, being able to reject some of the sensitivity and deal with that, because you can realize it's not just you, it's not all in your head. I wasn't just trying hard enough. It's realizing you're not lazy, you're not broken. Regularly, you don't talk too much. The chaos part is part of it. I definitely talk too much. And I'm always chaotic, and it does feel me more reassurance and feel more tired. Sorry, I'm trying to answer your questions at the same time. Yes, I think that ADHD adults needs more reassurance. I think that comes with the fact they've been overly criticized and held to a standard that they couldn't reach. So then I think that once you find who you are, that you need that reassurance to be loved for who you are, because that was challenged internally. And I feeling more tired, I think it's because you use more emotional parts at the same time. I would find it an ADHD cycle of high energy and crash and needing that alone time. And my therapist told me when I was first diagnosed with it, to manage it, the best thing you could do is have intentional crash time, because if you don't pick it, you will get tired and burn out, because ADHD can be a bit of a contradiction. You are an extrovert that needs complete alone time to recharge, to be the extrovert, and if you don't get it, you're exhausted. But to go back to the diagnosis, I think from getting that, it can help shift everything. I think you get a grief and a relief at the same time when you're diagnosed, because you can grieve for the version of you that struggled without any understanding and the support you didn't have, the years that you spent blaming yourself for being sensitive, talking too much, being chaotic, all of these things you blamed yourself for, you realize are part of who you are. And then you can get a bit of grief over the relationships, decisions, and self image that were all shaped without the full picture. And it can feel like a real loss. But then that's when the power begins, because once you understand yourself, you can start rewriting your identity, and not someone who's feeling, but someone who's trying to function a system that wasn't designed for them. That's when you can shift your narrative from I'm lazy or I'm tired, I've no discipline, to understanding that your energy is going to fluctuate, and that's part of how your brain works. You can realize more than that you need structure, but it has to be flexible. You can't put a rigid structure in place when you have ADHD. It's more like having a fragile streak on Snapchat where you like try to make it every day, and if you lose it, it's gone again. So you have to be, once you have the diagnosis, you can realize you need flexibility, you need time, you're not failing, you just need a different approach. You can also stop comparing yourself to that neurotypical standard and start understanding you have your own. And from then, you can build something that actually works for you. So I think then ways that can actually help, that are simple to understand, but like harder to implement, they're tools that I use, and they're not perfect. They're just, if you use them consistently, they can help make a difference. So one of the biggest ones for me is breath, 60-second reset. I did this multiple times before this call. And as a mom, I definitely need this. And it might literally mean stepping into the bathroom for the minute, a kitchen, a car. You can make sure your baby's safe and fine, and go and focus on your breath. Slowing your breath right down calms your body physically. But if you can focus on your breath at the same time as you're breathing, you can also calm your mind, and it can help when your emotions feel really intense. Another thing, of a practical thing that can help when someone was asking around about having breakdowns like quickly and intensely. If I get to that point, what you can do is you can put your face in the cold water, or on the inside of your wrist, or on the back of your neck, because it can snap your thoughts. And sometimes that's all it takes, is to break that buildup that's been happening. It sounds simple, but it really, really works, because you don't need to fix everything. But if you can fix the moment, then you can control the next moment. So then something else that you can do is externalize your thoughts. So I seen that someone said about talking too much. That's a major, major problem for me. My brain is always racing, always full of thoughts. So you should journal, whether that's on paper, on a laptop, on a phone. If you can get your overflowing thoughts out, you can structure them, and it can help. A lot of ADHD people are verbalists, in the sense of they process out loud, and they can't process their thoughts until they get them out. So you could record it on a voice note as well, by the way, if you're not interested in writing. If you can use it for reflection, for as you're working on yourself and looking back at how far you've come, or if you don't want anyone to ever come across your feelings and it's your safe space, you can write it in your notes app and immediately just delete it. And that can just help be an emotional dump. But I think, sorry, before I got the last one, the sensory, right, reset the body. This one is something I do daily. I live very close to where I'm lucky I can go outside in nature. If you can do, I would be moving every day. Physical movement calms the nervous system. It calms an ADHD mind. Also, it can increase dopamine, which ADHD people are lacking in. So movement is going to help boost your mood, whether that is walking outside, getting a walking pad in the house, whatever movement you can do, and just shifting your physical state will help reframe all of your thoughts. And a 30-minute walk is equivalent to the same chemicals in your brain that an antidepressant is. So a walk is worth it for so many reasons. 100 extra points if you can manage to get it into nature. And it doesn't matter how many times you do this. And it's something I actually used a lot as a mum, because if your baby is upset or unsettled, you can put them in the pram and they can be clean and fed and well looked after. And you can pop your earphones in, even if they're upset. Children can be upset for 5 minutes, and you can watch them as you're pushing them in the pram. How do you explain ADHD to a spouse, partner, or don't understand? That's a difficult one. I think truly to understand, you have to go through it or witness someone at least go through it. When I was first with my partner, I hadn't told him to begin with the full extent. And when I did, I remember he said that, well, I noticed because you do your things. And I was baffled by that statement because I felt like I had been hiding it, but I think that you can't hide it. So he already had an idea. I will try and explain to him with TikTok videos. Actually, I use quite a lot, or articles, and try and show some of that, because I think some of the videos are great, like for auditory processing, or how the overlaying thoughts and the noise in your mind can sound, because I don't think there's any way that I could ever put that into words. So I find TikTok videos and reels useful where there's sounds that can mimic what I'm feeling, and I will send him that, or I'll get to watch a podcast and things like that. I'll use content and I'll use different forms of it to try and use someone else's words and visuals as well as my own, or talking about a situation after it's happened, after I get overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed recently. I was in a car for 3 hours with my child and my dog and my partner, and it was just noise and movement. And I got so upset and angry. And after I took myself away, I had to come back and try and explain that it was because of noise and that I'm not very good at rationalizing in that moment. Take ownership of it, but just try and explain why it happened, and then with support media. If that answers your question. The last thing then that I think is the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is have a mindset shift, and that is to lower the bar of the expectations you have on yourself. A lot of ADHDers have perfectionism as an issue. I was once told that it's common that we have a superhero syndrome where we think we can do everything to the absolute highest